like I meant it? Okay, cool. Good morning, everybody. I'm Rose Kilmery. I'm the Vice President of the board this year. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation. We are a religious community who commit ourselves to diversity. We hope to nourish human differences, those of gender, race, age, ability, sexual orientation, political views, culture, class, and religious beliefs. Welcome to all who treasure freedom of conscience in the search for truth. We promise to do our best to provide you a spiritual home. We extend a special welcome to our visitors today. We hope you follow our Facebook page. To participate in Zoom and receive announcements about special events and our religious exploration classes, please sign up for our weekly email. There should be a link in the comments section on our Facebook page where you can sign up. No recent announcements to draw your attention to. So for those in person, any announcements would be printed in your order of service, and there are links in the UUC newsletter and weekly UU connections for those watching online today. Thank you all for joining us in person or online today.
Our music for gathering this morning is Winds Be Still, and the words are by Richard Kimball, and the music by Samuel Sebastian Wesley. Winds be still, storm clouds pass and silence come, peace grace this time with harmony. Fly, bird of hope, and shine, light of love, and in calm let all find tranquility. Bird, fly high, lift our gaze toward distant view. Help us to sense life's mystery. Fly high and far and lead us each to see how we move through the winds of eternity. Light shine in, illuminate our inward view. Help us to see with clarity. Shine bright and true, so we may join our songs in new sounds that become full symphony. Good morning.
Good morning. Don't hog the mic.
Okay, I'm Reverend Julie, and this is...
I'm Phil Swanhorse.
Yeah, this is Phil Swanhorse. We're both doing brat stands very soon.
Yes.
And I have a brat stand coming up on the 15th, 16th, and 17th of July.
And the other good brat stand is coming up the first full weekend in August, the 5th, 6th, and 7th.
But all of the brat stand volunteers are welcome to join me.
And you can join both weekends and any one day on either weekend. We need the help.
So the brat stand this coming weekend on the 15th, 16th, and 17th goes directly to support UUC. And right now we have a full cadre of volunteers on Friday. We're still short 2 volunteers on Saturday and 2 shift leaders on Sunday. So if we don't get the shift leaders for Sunday, we will shut down Sunday and only do Friday and Saturday.
The August Good Brought Stand, sorry, we do have a shift leader for first and second, all on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We need volunteers, however, for all 3 days. Go to the UU page and pick your time you want to come and help us out.
And what is your support?
Our supports the Social Responsibility Committee, and we support many activities that the whole congregation participates in, like the community table, Sojourner House, and many other things we do throughout the year.
Thank you to everyone who comes out to support, either through cheering us on or volunteer time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Little friendly competition. I'm not sure which one I'm going to sign up for. Anyway, both. Yes. Well, good morning. I'm Linda Mays, and I'm your worship associate for this morning, and we are so glad that you have joined us. We welcome those who are here in person and those who are online, our special guests from Wisconsin, Minnesota, and the Dakotas. So welcome to all. This morning's opening words are written by Tanya Marquez, called Our Lives Intersect and Intertwine. Vines cross and intertwine themselves on a tree trunk. And it is a wonder and mystery that our lives have crossed, that in the immensity of time, in the vastness of space, we coincide here. I am in awe at the ways in which our lives intersect and intertwine, at the beauty that we create when we gather. May our coming together make us more compassionate, more just, more caring, and more loving. May our hearts and minds be open to this offering. I'm so glad you're here. Let us worship. Let us marvel at the miracle of being here right now and the mystery that has brought us together. It is our practice. Okay, well, I have to practice. I don't know. It's our practice to light the chalice each week. All right, I got it. And so will you join with me in reading the words that are printed in your bulletin together? At this hour, in small towns and big cities, in single rooms and ornate sanctuaries, many of our sibling Unitarian Universalist congregations are also lighting a flaming chalice. As we light our chalice today, let us remember we are a part of a great community of faith. May this dancing flame inspire us to fill our lives with the Unitarian Universalist ideals of love, justice, and truth. In today's service, we are exploring inspirations from science, the beauty of the world, and the journeys of Henry David Thoreau. And I will be reading an excerpt from his noted book, Walden. But I first want to confess that I thought I was a fairly educated person, but there were 2 words that I did not know, true confessions. So I'm sure you already know these 2 words. The word tarn, T-A-R-N, is like a small pond or a lake that often is up at the sides of a mountain. So I see some shaking your heads. I am in awe that you knew that. And the second word I had heard, but I wasn't confident in the meaning, and you may already know this word, conventicle. I wasn't sure of the meaning, but that is, we can picture maybe at night some kind of a secret gathering, a group in the woods, maybe a religious or spiritual group that's gathered at night and it's kind of secret. That's a conventicle. So Thoreau uses these words and this word conventicle, a nocturnal conventicle, in the reading. So that's our vocabulary lesson for the day. And now from reading Thoreau from his book, Walden. When first I took up my abode in the woods, that is, began to spend my nights as well as days there, which by accident was on Independence Day, or the 4th of July, 1845. My house was not finished for winter, but was merely a defense against the rain, without plastering or chimney, the walls being a rough, weather-stained boards with wide chinks, which made it cool at night. The upright, white-hewn studs and freshly planed door and window casings gave it a clean and airy look, especially in the morning when its timbers were saturated with dew, so that I fancied that by noon some sweet gum would exude from them. I was seated by the shore of a small pond, about 1.5 miles south of the village of Concord, and somewhat higher than it, in the midst of an extensive wood between that town and known to fame Concord battleground. But I was so low in the woods that the opposite shore, 1/2 mile off like the rest covered with woods, was my most distant horizon. For the first week, whenever I looked out on the pond, it impressed me like a tarn high up on the side of a mountain, its bottom far above the surface of other lakes, and as the sun arose, I saw it throwing off its nightly clothing of mist, and here and there by degrees its soft ripples where its smooth, reflecting surface was revealed, while the mists, like ghosts, were stealthily withdrawing in every direction into the woods as at the breaking up of some nocturnal conventicle. The very dew seemed to hang upon the trees later into the day than usual, as on the sides of mountains. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. I did not wish to live what was no life. Living is so dear. Nor did I wish to practice resignation unless it was quite necessary. I wanted to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life, to live so sturdily and Spartan-like as to put to rout all that was not life, to cut a broad swath and shave close, to drive life into the corner and reduce it to its lowest terms. And if it proved to be mean, why then to get the whole and genuine meanness of it and publish its meanness to the world. Or if it were sublime, to know it by experience and to be able to give a true account of it by my next excursion.
So this July and August, our 50-50 Share the Plate recipient is the LGBTQ Center. And the LGBTQ Center is actually almost our neighbor over here. And they support so many people in so many ways. There is a trans support group. There is an LGBTQ youth group, which members of our own youth group have appreciated and been a part of. And during the pandemic, they especially provided support when mental health and feeling alone was so hard for so many people, whether young or old. And so as a shining beacon in our community of fighting for the equality of LGBTQ rights, I encourage you to think about supporting our 50-50 Share the Plate during the giving. And if you want to make a pledge payment or something else, you can indicate that online if you're making a payment or when those in person and the offering plate goes by. Thank you for all your generosity and all that this congregation does to support this community. The offering will now be given and very gratefully received.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way. On the road from greed to giving, love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak for thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way. On the road from greed to giving, love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak for thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way. On the road from greed to giving, love will guide us through the hard night. If you can, we with you. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Thank you, Jim. Join me in unison. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. You know, when I was thinking of the theme of the service, sort of celebration and consideration of the way this world and nature and the awe that is around us can provide nourishment, I thought about for myself when I was young, you know, that sometimes there's things you can't explain, they just are. And from the time I was a small child, I have been drawn to rocks, more not as the scientist, but more as the appreciator, the one who, I don't know, the beauty of them, something about them, their energy, the life in them, something, I don't know, I have a thing for rocks. And they nourish me when I'm around them or I'm picking them up. I don't know why. It just is. And I think for each of us, we have those things, those people, those places, whether it's the sky or a certain aspect of this world or a certain type of work or activity that we do, whether it's music, who knows, whatever it is. But I encourage us to think, even reflect for this moment, what about life nourishes us? And this next brief reading invites us to do that for a few simple things, but maybe consider also for yourself what nourishes you. This is by J. Wolin. When I look up into the night sky, I am in awe of all that is. There, in a faraway galaxy, a star has died. Yet it is still bright for my eyes and to see and make a wish upon. When I walk in the ocean, I feel the waves rush across my feet, and I feel certain peace with the world. I peer out into the endless horizon, knowing these waves came from a place beyond where I can see. When I sit around the fire, I feel its warmth enter me without ever touching me, and I feel safe from the unknown. Wherever I am, I take in a breath, and I know I am in the present moment. All of these wonders that move us and make us feel alive and make us dream and make us wonder, let us protect them so that our children, everyone's children, our grandchildren, everyone's grandchildren, for generations upon generation, will also have the chance to look beyond the horizon and marvel at the wonder of existence and continue to be nourished by our home, the earth.
So when we think about awe, I remember a story that my mom told me when I was little, and babies were called little Oz, and she said, why are babies called little Oz? And they go, aw, little, aw. they're little Oz. And we think about all the things that cause us to go, aw. Is that awe? You know, what is awe? Is it our wonder, our sense of joy, our sense of connecting with something bigger than us, or being broken out of our common experience? And so Henry David Thoreau wrote in his journal in February 2nd, 1841, a child asked his father what became of the old moon, and he says it was cut up into stars. And so I just think about that, you know, what became of the old moon? It became the stars. And here in our sanctuary at the UU, we have a large window that talks about the creation of the universe, and it is made of stars and cosmic aspirations. And you know, we ask these big questions. You know, where did we come from? Why are we here? What's the meaning of our life? You know, some of us are nerds and watch Star Trek or Star Wars or enjoy whatever it is that makes us, you know, imagine what is it like out beyond the stars. And then we go to, you know, 1841, when Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson walked side by side in the Concord woods, and you think that they did not have, you know, satellites and NASA and all of these things to help explain the world. And so how did they approach life, and how did they look to move through the world? You know, our culture is one of toxic busyness sometimes. You know, it's, I think the pandemic has shone a light on that, you know, that I hear so many people say it's so nice to think about, do I really need to drive to this meeting, or can I hop on Zoom and tune in from my garden? You know, do I really need to do the same things that I have always done? And maybe during that great pause, during the time of the pandemic, you know, some of us were busier than ever, but it still was a pause in what was our normal life, whatever normal is, but it was a pause. And it caused me to reflect on how I wanted to pace myself. And I know I found myself living with a chronic illness. I have rheumatoid arthritis, so I can't do as fast as I used to do, and that's frustrating, But there's also a gift in that, a gift in being present with the moment, being present with the energy that you do have. And what I really love about Henry David Thoreau and his ideas about walking and encountering awe is that presence, that paying attention to the present moment. And in the very beginning of the pandemic, and when we were starting to feel housebound and just going stir crazy, or at least that's how I felt, I would get out and walk in the neighborhood. And I was so grateful that I was in a neighborhood with sidewalks and with woods behind it. And it was such a joy. I would do it 3 times a day. I'd go morning, lunch, and night at first. And it was such a joy to see, how did the light change on a house? How did a flower grow 2 days ago? What child put a welcoming message telling us all that it's going to be okay, from the mouths of babes? Who had teddy bears in their windows? Who was walking their cat in my in my neighborhood? It was amazing. There was somebody who walked a cat without a leash. I don't know how they did it. And then we were out in Sherman Woods, and we encountered somebody with 3 cats following them too. I don't know. It was a miracle. I was in awe. But it's these tiny little moments, these fragments of beauty that held out, that were the buffer between me and what was so incredibly heavy. And we think about Henry David Thoreau and Emerson, who lived in a time of tuberculosis. Emerson lost so many people in his life. And Henry David Thoreau died young in his 40s of tuberculosis. And so it was a time when death definitely was not very far away. And things were mysterious and hard. But what Henry David Thoreau said, why live life the way that I am prescribed to live it? So that's what I want to talk about today. So awe is a complex emotion, and it can be difficult to define. Feelings of awe can be positive or negative. I know I've felt a sense of awe when I'm up high. I don't do very well with heights, but I try. And there was a psychologist, Dr. Keltner and Jonathan Haidt, who presented a conceptual approach to awe. And they did a paper that suggested that awe experiences can be characterized into 2 different phenomena: perceived vastness and a need for accommodation. Perceived vastness can come from observing something physically large, like the Grand Canyon or the Taj Mahal. And it's this perception of vastness in the presence of something. Or maybe you're visiting. I know I got to see the Dalai Lama, and I was blown away in awe by this sense of vastness by being in his presence. And then an experience that evokes a need for accommodation is when it takes us away from the norm of the world, when it exceeds our expectations or our mental structures that can understand the world, and it causes us to make a mental realignment to handle that awe. And so I think about the pandemic. The pandemic definitely caused a need for accommodation in my brain. What do you mean I can't go out and hug people? What do you mean I can't go be social and have to stay in my house? And so it definitely caused an awe of something so big that affected my life. And so we think about the ways that we experience awe, and usually we think about it as something that puts us into a transcendent state. There we go. Big words. Transcendent state. And in fact, Henry David Thoreau and Emerson were called transcendentalist. And they really moved away from the idea that we have to find our wisdom in books, that we have to go to universities and have to sit in a church to be wise or to be close to the sacred or the holy. So we've all experienced it, the mystery and wonder of an ordinary moment that suddenly unfolds into deeper meaning. Every day becomes luminous. And one of the sources of Unitarian Universalism is that direct experience of mystery and wonder. So I don't know if you have a memory of seeing the filter of sun through leaves, or the smell of grass after rain, the release of laying down on the ground and looking up at the sky, letting go of your woe, letting go of your tiredness. One of my favorite experiences when I was about a teenager, I guess, and I had a girlfriend, and her mom drove us over the Lake Murray Dam in South Carolina. We had a lake that would ease our heat and woes in South Carolina. And anyway, it was a mile wide, and she would a mile long. We would roll down the windows. We didn't have electric windows then. We rolled them down, and she said, "Okay, now scream at the top of your lungs." And we go, "Ah!" And we let it all in the wind, and you'd see the water, and we did this for a whole mile. And and as a 13-year-old who had lots of rules, I thought this was the best thing in the world, and and that was a sense of awe. So I think awe does not have to be quiet. It can be a huge release. It can move us to be transformed. So Thoreau was born in 1817. He went to Harvard in 1837 with Emerson. And after Harvard, his life was fairly solitary, but eventful. He was a tutor for a number of families. He worked in his family pencil factory. In fact, he helped the graphite be more effective in pencils. Who knew? I didn't know. He worked as a surveyor and also as a public lecturer. But most notedly, he liked to talk about the fact that he was a natural historian. He was someone who took notes on nature incessantly. He had journals for over 25 years, and from a lot of that work and the work of his peers is how we've accomplished a great deal of notation about early environmentalism and early nature writing. And in 1845, he received permission from Ralph Emerson to use a piece of land that Emerson owned on the shore of Walden Pond. So he bought building supplies and a chicken coop for the boards, and he built himself his own tiny house. You know, we think about tiny houses. Well, this was definitely a tiny house. And he moved there on the 4th of July. And he had two main purposes: to write, and also it was a tribute to his late brother John. He wanted to conduct an economic experiment to see if it was possible to live by working one day and devoting the other 6 to more transcendental concerns, and thus reversing the Yankee habit of working 6 days and resting 1. So he made a study of resting. And maybe you've seen these books about his life. Henry hikes to Fitchburg. But during that, he stops and eats the blackberries. And he stops and looks at the birds. He stops to fish. And then eventually he gets to his task, and he does a task like mending a fence, and then he walks back and he does the thing. And so when I think of our life of busyness and the schedules that we keep, trying to think about in balance. Most of us did not have the type of privilege that Thoreau had, and I'll talk a little bit of that. But I think he's got some really good concerns about stepping out of what life supposedly tells us to do. So he stayed there for 2 years, and during those 2 years, he spent one night in jail because he didn't want to pay a poll tax. And then somebody paid it for him, and he's like, okay, whatever. And then he was no longer in jail. But that was his resistance for civil disobedience. But he wrote some really powerful treatises on civil disobedience and observations of nature. But let's note that Thoreau wasn't exactly roughing it. It is a favorite point of his critics that the wildlife that he had was rather tame. His mother famously helped him out with his laundry and food over the 2 years. He had guests over regularly, and the land itself was not super rugged. And Catherine Schultz of the New Yorker said, Walden Pond in 1845 was scarcely more off the grid relative to contemporaneous society than Prospect Park is today. The commuter train to Boston ran along its southwest side. In the summer, the place was swarmed with picnickers and swimmers, and while in winters it was frequented by ice cutters and skaters. And she adds that Thoreau would take a 20-minute walk to his family home. And so he was not Robinson Crusoe. But at the same time, many of us are not. And so I think about the fact that we don't have to go very far to go away, right? We here in Eau Claire, we can go out 20 minutes and see and actually in Eau Claire, we can see bears, we can see eagles, and you go out 20 minutes and the wilding of the land is quite profound. And trying to, I remember nights trying to chase the northern lights and trying to get away from the lights of the city. I still haven't found northern lights, so if anybody wants to help me sometime, let me know. But that dream of the wild is so important. And while we don't want to lift up Thoreau as this idyllic, perfect person, none of us are. We're all flawed. Thoreau was a grumpy guy. He was not very social. He was a bit of a prude, but he had a focus. He had a focus on living life the way that he thought he should live it. And so often his arguments would go in different directions, but his gift was observation, nature writing, ecology, noting the spiritual nature of rest. Like many transcendentalists, he lifted up awe and wonder in our lives. And so one of the things that he wrote was a treatise on walking, which is great. People write treatises on, like theological concepts, but he wrote his on walking. And he reminds us that to walk is to connect with our essential wildness. And let's see if I can find his quote here. So he said, intending to regard man and just humanity as an inhabitant or part or parcel of nature rather than a member of society, there are enough champions of civilization. He argues that the genius of walking lies in not putting your foot one in front of the other, but in mastering the art of sauntering. Here's a berry. Here's a star. Slow it down. See what you see. I want to saunter through life. I think that's the best medicine I've heard in a long time. And it's not always possible, but what if you sauntered for 30 minutes a day, even if you're sauntering in your house? Because walking is also something that's not available to everybody, but there are many ways for us to move in the world, whether if we're wheel-bound or if we are doing marathons. There are so many ways to move in the world and see the beauty. And what he talks about with sauntering is, he says that, this definition of genius, he says, genius is a light which makes the darkness visible, like the lightning's flash, which perchance shatters the temple of knowledge itself. Not a taper lighted at the hearthstone, but it pales before the light of common day. And so he looked at sauntering, and it came from La Sainte Terre of the Holy Land. And it was someone who did holy walks. You think of the pilgrimages and people who went to labyrinths and seeking knowledge. So every walk is a sort of crusade. It's every day that we wake up and we say, it's a new day. One thing I've been practicing each day is to go out in my garden and see what's blooming. I grew hollyhock for the first time. It's so exciting because I'll be honest, I've never seen a hollyhock in person because I'm from South Carolina. I'm used to magnolias and dogwoods, and so hollyhock, and maybe it does grow in the South and I didn't see it. But it's taller than I am, and each day this little pink blossom has come out, and it just peeks out at me, and I go smell it, and I stand by it, and I pet it. I mean, it's silly, but it makes me so happy. And, we think about the news and all the things that are hard. And what is that awe and that time of pausing? So I saunter through my garden and smell and see the bugs, bless the bugs because they're pollinators. So Thoreau's prescription, the prescription for health, is sauntering through the woods and over the hills and fields. So whether that's Carson Park, or whether it's, if you can't get out and walk, driving up and looking at the ducks at Carson Park. I love going there in the winter because there's a place near Bronze Bay where it's all melted, and you could just sit there and watch them, and it's freezing out there, and they're just ducking and diving and living their best life, and I'm just wondering, how does that happen? How is that happening? So I want you to think about a moment where you paused, where you took a breath and escaped the everyday. What was it that it felt like in your body? I know for me, I type a lot, and I get worried about things, and my shoulders go up to my chin, and so it's like a yoga movement. It's dropping my shoulders, feeling my breath, and remembering that I too am an animal. I'm part of the wild. So often we separate ourselves from life, and here we are. We're a miracle. We're on this little ball in the middle of space. We have these lives that happen somehow, and what are we doing with them? And Henry David Thoreau, he would walk out of church. He didn't go to church. He said, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to go find wonder in nature. And he didn't listen to his peers who said you should drink and be rowdy. He's like, no, I'm going to find wisdom elsewhere. And so while he had his mom bring him cookies at Walden Pond, that's okay. I remember going out and camping in my backyard, and I remember thinking I was a brave explorer, and I was going to hear wild noises from the woods behind me, and I was going to see the stars and be brave and true and explore. And of course, in the middle of the night, I came inside, and I was terrified because of the noises, but I was out there for a while in my sleeping bag in the backyard, and that was very wild. And so I think being gentle with ourselves, allowing us to saunter, to experience awe, and to find that love for ourselves and for nature can be healing. I wish that for you in these hard times. Blessed be.
I don't know about you, but I feel full, and I feel very appreciative and grateful for this invitation that's been given to us from the words that we've heard, the words that we've read together, the words that were sung, the invitation to observe and take in and experience awe and nourishment. I'm grateful. So we've come to the time of the service where we extinguish our chalice, and I extinguish it with gratitude. And I ask that you might join with me in reading the words printed in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
May our lives be a reflection of the beauty, peace, and joy that is possible in the world. And may the love which we find in this place sustain us as we go our separate ways. And we will now be ending our service on Facebook, but those on Zoom and in person, we will continue with joys and concerns.